I'm doing my Behaviorst biography project on Donald Hantula. A little bit about Donald is he received his bachelor's degree from Emory. He received his PhD from Notre Dame, which is close to me and my family because my brother went there as well as my grandfather, so I found that to be kind of fun and interesting. He currently works at Temple University, which is also relatable because I grew up 15 minutes from Temple University, so I felt like picking him as for my project was kind of happenstance. And his role is the head of the decision-making laboratory, and he also is a professor with some courses throughout Temple University. So the 5 articles that I chose to research were mostly from the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis as well as the Journal of Organizational Behavior Management, which we'll talk later is what Donald Hantula is mostly known for. So the first article that I analyzed was Outside the Organization, the Analysis of Consumer Behavior. This was from the Journal of Organizational Behavior Management. And this article was mostly about how behavior analysis can be used to improve individual performance in organizations. So organizational behavior management is now focusing on organizational system changes. So using behavioral principles and OBM strategies to affect consumer behavior has always been a part of applied behavior analysis, and both behavior analysts and marketing scientists agree that consumer behavior analysis is going to be the next main focus of behavioral work just because of the relevance of it. And something that I found most interesting from this article was how Hantula actually believes that consumption is the main economic activity in a post-industrial world. Therefore, organizational behavior management must analyze consumer behavior in order to be successful. The next article that I researched and analyzed was a prompting procedure for increasing sales in a small pet store. So I absolutely love animals, so this one really stood out to me and was extremely interesting. So this one was about a small pet store that just had grooming and daycare, and they just could not keep business. They remodeled their store and they got all new products. However, it still was not bringing in the revenue or the customers that they needed. So what this experiment did was had a series of prompts for the cashiers to give customers. So they had a series of index cards that were just completely randomized, and the owner of the pet store was to pick from this series of randomized index cards that all had prompts on them. And the prompts were all formatted in such ways as, would you like to buy blank, in the name of the product inserted into the blank. And this simple task of prompting the dog owners to look at certain products actually led to a dramatic increase in sales. And this was due to the increase of effort and constant effort it takes to keep your prompting consistent. The next journal article was Teaching Self-Control with Qualitatively Different Reinforcers. And this was from the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis. And it stated that self-control is viewed as a behavior that occurs when there is access to a delayed, more preferred consequence rather than an immediate, less preferred consequence. So this study was actually about a male adolescent with an intellectual disability who they were trying to teach self-control. And he was actually able to be taught self-control by creating larger delays between the delivery of his preferred reinforcers. Next was a simple basic program to generate values for variable interval schedules of reinforcement. This one was also from the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis. This one was more kind of program-based rather than business-based or having to do with reinforcers. So, well, not reinforcers, sorry. It does have to do with reinforcers. It has to do with variable interval schedules of reinforcement, but it kind of got away from what I created as a vision of Donald Hantula in my head. So this one was about behavior being exposed to a variable interval schedule usually produces consistent rates. However, for variable interval schedules, it's necessary that the probability of reinforcement remains consistent. So because of this, an equation had to be developed by Fleshler and Hoffman that results in an acceptable sequence of variable interval reinforcer values, for any number of steps and average interval values. So this equation actually would take you forever to do by hand, and it was very taxing. So therefore, there was a program called BASIC that was created to calculate these VI values using Fleshler and Hoffman's equations. And finally, the basic importance of escalation was another article that I researched, and this was from the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis as well. So these last two were kind of ones that I, in my paper, said I felt didn't really fit into what I think Donald Hantula is very well known for, like organizational behavior management, as well as like consumer behavior analysis and things like that. So I think these were kind of a different side of Donald Hantula that I was excited to explore. So once again, this was the basic importance of escalation, and this was saying that behavior analysts is not necessarily the root of decision making in large organizations. So many accounts of escalation are not from a behavioral point of view. So therefore, they can seem contradictory, and it doesn't really help us to understand escalation. When it comes to decision making, obviously we know that the environment is the key component that determines the response. However, it is important also to think about a person's past. So Johnston and Skinner kind of got into this as well. So a person's past cannot be measured. Therefore, rubrics have been created to measure constructs such as cognition, memory, and personality to make up for the individual history being immeasurable. So these were the 5 articles that I picked to research. They just really stood out to me and grabbed my interest. And I found them to be really enjoyable to read, and really got to know a basic understanding of organizational behavior management as well as consumer behavior analysis, which was something that I wasn't really familiar with before this class, and even more so before this project. So I really felt happy to be able to have this opportunity to dive deeper. This is my favorite, my interview with Donald Hantula. So some questions I would ask him would be, first, as head of the decision-making laboratory at Temple University, how do you apply your vast amount of knowledge to your everyday life when it comes to decision-making? I kind of imagine that if you're such an expert that you run a lab at Temple about decision-making, that I wonder if he would be like in his head about every type of decision, like when his kids applied to college, what was he thinking about their decisions? Or even like a simple fight with his wife or something, what are his thoughts about decisions, and does this kind of encompass his life? Another question I would ask him is, how do you bring your knowledge of organizational behavior into the classroom? Because I know he is a professor, or at least was in 2013, of a course at Temple. So I'm wondering if he is kind of has an upper hand with this strong knowledge of organizational behavior, and if he is more successful when he brings that into the classroom. My third question was, what was your favorite research experiment to conduct and why? I would definitely tell him that the pet store one would be my favorite, but I would be curious to see what finding or what was his favorite research to come across. My fourth question was, what sparked your interest in the topics of organizational behavior and evolutionary behavioral economics? So these are the 2 areas that he's most well known for. So it's just kind of interesting to me as to what created this drive within him. And my final question would be, what is a typical day like as head of the decision-making laboratory? I tried to research, there really wasn't much about this decision-making laboratory, so I'd be curious to find more about that. So Donald Hantula has made a difference in the field by using his knowledge of organizational behavior management to improve when needed, and he also seems to have a tremendous vision of where behaviorism is headed. So like I said, he knows that consumer analysis has to be the next thing that is analyzed, because that is going to be the future with online shopping and etc. And as a new and a forthcoming behaviorist in the future, hopefully, I really just view him as a role model, because he seems to be extremely intelligent and was able to come up with incredible findings through a lot of hard work and perseverance. So I really do respect him a bunch, and I really enjoyed researching and learning about him. Okay, I hope you liked my presentation and learned a lot about Donald Hantula. Have a good day.